Hello, my friends, and happy Thursday. I'm so excited about today's project. I called it Eclectic Collection. It's a necklace, and the reason I'm super excited to share this with you is because it's one of my favorite techniques, or actually it's multiple of my favorite techniques. We are going to set a stone. We are going to make a focal point into a pendant. And most importantly, we are going to talk about symmetry versus asymmetry and how to balance things visually. Everything has a visual weight. And so I'm going to give you a few little tips, and if you have your own tips, please feel free to share. So we'll talk about how to balance the two sides of our necklace without making them symmetrical.
Fonda says, good evening, everyone. Happy Thursday. Looking forward to this demo.
Hi, Fonda. Happy Thursday to you, my friend. I am so looking forward to sharing this with you. This is one of my favorite things to do, is just gather a whole bunch of different stones and pearls and combine them into something that is really interesting visually. There's so many different, there's a lot going on here, you guys. So there are a lot of different textures. There are a lot of different finishes. There's some faceted beads, there's smooth beads, there are pearls. There is a stone that we're going to set in a setting like this. So there's just a lot, and we get to paint with all sorts of colors, which is my favorite thing ever. Just combining different elements that do not necessarily have to match anything else in the necklace.
Pammy J says, hi, Irina, Tony, and everyone.
Hi, Pammy J.
Ellen says, hi, Irina, and everyone.
And hello, Ellen.
Patricia says, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Patricia.
Jolene says, hello.
Hey, Jolene.
And Angela says, good evening.
Hello, good evening, Angela. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining us this beautiful rainy evening. So let's talk just a little bit about the three different colorways. So there are a lot of similarities in how I constructed them because, of course, given that this is a kit and this video is my set of directions for your kit, I made them similar enough that whichever colorway you go with, the directions are going to be applicable. However, there are some small differences in the choices of beads in each necklace. And this, of course, is because none of these beads are cookie cutter. You don't always get the same shape and cut beads in every gemstone. So each colorway is definitely individual, and even within those colorways, you will have some differences because each stone is nature's work of art. You know what? I just realized how similar these are. Well, okay, so these are unusually similar, but as you guys know, every gemstone is going to be just a little bit unique, and depending on the gemstone, some of them have some very distinct patterns, like the amethyst, for example. This is chevron amethyst, and it is iconic in the gem world for this stone to have such varying patterns. So I promise you, no two are going to be exactly alike. So just kind of expect a few variations, and even variations, as I mentioned, from kit to kit. Okay, so having said that, we have a palette and you can string your beads in exactly the same order as mine, or you can do a little remixing and it will work. But that is exactly why I'm going to talk about balance as you design a piece that is not symmetrical. So if you are going to remix the necklace, remix all of the components that come in the kit, or perhaps you are designing your own, I'm just going to share some of my own guidelines to designing something that is asymmetrical like this.
Julie says hi.
Hi, Julie.
And Karen says, good evening, everyone.
And hello, Karen. Okay, ladies, so a little bit about how I do asymmetry. And of course, everybody does it a little bit differently. But I love to start with our main focal point. So each one of these colorways has a very distinct focal point, which is going to be an elongated gemstone. So this colorway is called Amethyst Mountain, and we have a beautiful chevron amethyst at the center of it. And our Southwest colorway has a really stunning, vibrant red jasper as the focal point. And last but not least, we have Lake Country, and Lake Country has a larvacite or Norwegian moonstone at the center of it. And so we start out with the main focal point, and as we design the piece, so this is how I do it. If I have a focal point, and then I want to introduce maybe a couple of secondary focal points, and they're going to be on the opposite sides of the necklace. So what I do is, this would be one of my secondary focal points, the drop. And each one of the colorways has its own color teardrop. So the teardrop, to me, looks like it's the second heaviest component in terms of visual weight. So when we talk about visual weight, it's something that we're going to notice above all other components, right? Or how are we going to notice it? Does it appear heavier than perhaps this piece, this cabochon that is set in a little bezel setting? To me, it appears heavier. Even though they're very similar in size, you can see that they're very similar in size. However, the drop is very solid and it's a bit more dimensional. So we want to balance it out with perhaps not one, but two secondary focal points on the other side. So to me, having the bezeled cabochon plus the teardrop, and all of these have a bezeled cabochon and a teardrop. And so if we look at Amethyst Mountain colorway as an example, you can see that my cabochon on this one is white. So I chose white because it really picks up the whites in the focal point. It also kind of balances out the darker teardrop on the other side. However, the white focal point, because of its color, it's very light in color, so it has less visual weight than, let's say, this cabochon, which is a hessonite garnet. So the hessonite garnet, being that orangey brown, appears to have more visual weight, so we don't need as large of a teardrop. But next to the white cabochon, I have a larger amethyst teardrop to kind of help balance out the darker teardrop. if that makes sense. So that is pretty much, you know, some of how I make my choices as I create these pieces. So some of the other choices come with the colors and shapes of some of the smaller pieces in the necklace. So whether it's a smooth pearl, or maybe a gemstone bead, or maybe it's a faceted gemstone bead. So everything is there for a reason. Everything is there to give us both contrast and balance. Also, I like using colors that are complementary. For example, this kind of a warm peach to me is really complementary to the purple in the amethyst stone. And similarly, the Southwest, this is a very classic set of gemstone colors that we often find in Southwestern inspired jewelry. And lastly, I have kind of a very summery colorway. This is Lake Country, inspired by our own Wisconsin Lake Country, where we find hundreds of beautiful lakes in these sort of very calm blues and grays, and it's so pretty. So this is where some of my color choices and ideas come from. And if you have your own ideas on how to balance something that is asymmetrical or color choices, please feel free to weigh in, because color theory is really about interpretation. There's not just one rule like this always works or this never works. There isn't really a rule like that, because we're creating art, and so everybody has their own ideas. So I would love to hear from you, ladies. Feel free to share in the comments how you design your pieces, especially when they're asymmetrical.
Kathy says, hello, everyone.
Hi, Kathy, and thank you for joining us.
Lori says, good evening, Irina and Tony.
Hi, Lori.
Trudy says, hi, everyone.
Hello, Trudy.
Ellie says, hi, Irina and Tony. These are fantastic.
Hi, Ellie. Thank you so much.
And Bobby says, hi, all.
Hi, Bobby. All right, ladies. So I'm so glad you have joined me today for this project. And let's get started. So I have to tell you, actually, okay, I'm feeling a little wordy today. So I'm just going to share that when I sit down and I create pieces like this, sometimes I make myself crazy just looking for just the right bead to go after something, so literally every bead I kind of agonize about, but it's really great fun. It's very sweet agony. So it takes me, sometimes it takes me hours to come up with this little handful of beads. Of course, now that we have our handful of beads, it's going to be very easy to string. So I'm just showing you my little handful of beads and my cabochon and everything in my tray. So it's going to be very easy to string. And when if you decide to remix anything, so of course it's going to take a little more time, and for the sake of time I am going to replicate this just about exactly, but this is my disclaimer. Don't feel that you have to replicate it exactly. I'm only doing it because it's already done, and it's going to be a bit of a time saver. So if time is not of the essence, don't feel that you have to do it exactly the same way.
Pammy J says, you've taken asymmetrical to another level. It's awesome.
Oh, thank you so much, my friend. Thank you. Yeah, I love asymmetry. I love arty pieces like this, where every little bead and component brings interest. There's a lot of visual interest in a piece like this, because really nothing repeats. And whatever part of it you look at, it's like every time you notice something new. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Okay, ladies, so I would like to work from the center out. I think that kind of makes sense. So the first thing we're going to do is create a pendant with a bail. Okay, so we have a focal point piece like this with a little hole through. And one thing I'm going to say about a piece like this, and I know that this is going to strike a chord with several of you. So when you see a beautiful gemstone like this, and then there's a hole, and it's like maybe 4 or 5 millimeters down from the top, and it's kind of not a very large hole, and it's so often that people just want to find a jump ring and put it through this drilled hole. Well, I have news for you, my friends. Either you find a really enormous jump ring that is fairly skinny, small gauge jump ring, and it's going to look a little bit incongruous. And it's also not going to be the best way to make this into a pendant because a skinny jump ring is just not going to hold as well. Or the only other, well, no, there's another option, and that's a pinch bail. But the only other option other than the pinch bail, which can also, sometimes it can look really great, but sometimes not so much if you don't find just the right one. So then that just leaves us with the option of making a loop through the hole, which is always going to be so much more sturdy than a really large skinny jump ring. And the reason I'm emphasizing the point that it would have to be a skinny jump ring, because this is not a huge hole. It's like maybe 1.5 millimeter hole, no more than that.
Pam says, love these necklaces.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Allison says, love this necklace.
Thank you so much, Allison, and I'm so glad you joined us. So how's the move going? Okay, ladies, so let's get started with making this piece into our pendant. And the first step to that is going to be making a 90-degree angle with our 22 gauge wire. I'm using 22 gauge wire, and I just made that 90-degree angle nice and crisp, and I made it roughly 1.5 inches from the end. So my first loop is going to be the one that goes through that hole. So it has to be a fairly large loop. And for that reason, I'm using my bail making pliers. This is my medium bail making pliers. And I'm using the large side of that. So this is the size of my loop right now. It is about 6 millimeters or so. I can always make it smaller if I need to, but it's harder to make it larger. All right, so let's go ahead and string our piece onto the wire right into the loop. And of course I distorted the loop a little bit, not a big deal. I'm just going to give it a little squeeze just with my fingers. And so this is what it looks like from the side. And this is the front of it. And now this long, or actually the short end, sorry, I misspoke. So the short end, we're going to coil around. So literally all we're doing is just making a wrap loop. And we're coiling it around our long piece. And I coiled it 3 times. And now I am going to snip off the excess wire. And of course, as we always do, we are going to pinch the very end in. And now we're going to make the second loop. And as you can see, I made the loop so that it is small enough where it does not go over the corner of the stone on either side. So it's just going to sit here in place. And so now to make the second loop, which is going to be quite a bit smaller than the first, because the second loop, let me just see, I'm going to show you where it goes. So it's right there. And it needs to be small enough where this bead, which is kind of a little smaller, does not slide into the loop. So everything is engineered, not precisely, but you know, there's a little precision here because you know, we want all of the components to sit exactly where we intend them to be. And so I am making my second loop quite a bit smaller. I'm using my round nose pliers this time. And so this is what the loop looks like. It is approximately 3 millimeters inside diameter. This is what it looks like.
Yolanda says good evening, a little late.
Hi, Yolanda. I'm just so glad you joined us. Okay, and we're going to hold on to this loop. I might even make it a tiny bit smaller, okay, just by squeezing it a little bit with my chain nose pliers. So now I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to hold on to the smaller loop while I wrap right over the other coils. So yes, you guessed it, I'm making an organic wrap or an organically wrapped loop, and we could leave it just as is, or we could go back up and make it even more organic. I guess it depends on what kind of mood we're on, or we're in rather. And so if I want to go up and make this a little more organic yet, I'm just going to go right over the other coils. And so you can see it's getting a little more chunky, a little more organic. I kind of like that look, so I'm just going to go with that. And okay, so let's talk about this one more time. So the first set of coils on the very inside came from the bottom loop. Then we wrapped from the top loop to the bottom loop. That was the second time. And we just wrapped the third time, okay? And the third time is very much optional. So I don't want to cover up the loop, so I'm going to stop the coils just as I get to the second loop. And I'm going to cut off the excess wire. Okay, let's undo this a little bit just to cut it off. It's a lot easier. And so I just cut off the excess wire. And of course, we're going to pinch it in, the end of it, that is. So I just pinched in the very end. And here is our pendant. So this is our focal point piece. And now it is ready to string onto our soft flex wire. But wait, before we start stringing, we have a little more to do. So we have this lovely bezel setting right here, and we have our cabochon, and we are going to put the cabochon into our bezel, and we are going to pinch in all of these little prongs. So you see how there are these little prongs, and that is actually what the bezel consists of. And the best way to do this is you start on opposite directions. So we'll do a couple of prongs on this side and a couple of prongs on the other side. And if you already do some type of, and as you can see, now I'm going to the very top of the cabochon and the bottom of the cabochon. And then I'm going to go in between. But it's really important to start on opposite sides. And so let's say you do north-south, and then you do east-west, and then you do everything in between. So That is really important because if you start on one side and just keep going around the entire piece, by the time you get to the end, you will probably realize that it is a little bit off center because it's pretty much impossible to keep it centered if you go from one side to the next, like in a circular motion. Okay, so you saw how very, very quick and easy this is. So we're going to set this one aside. Actually, before we set it aside, we're going to put a little jump ring on it. And then it's going to be really ready to be strung. So this is my jump ring. And I'm using a chain nose pliers to hold it. And we always want to hold the flat nose at a 90-degree angle to our chain nose. You guys can see the 90-degree angle. And when I open up my jump ring, you can see how I kind of push one side of it over a little bit so that there's a little tiny overlap. So that when I put my component on here and then I go to close the jump ring, you can you guys see that little overlap? Well, let me put my hand behind it. Can you see the overlap now? So, okay, good.
Yeah, I think so.
Tony is nodding, so I think you can see the overlap. So the two sides of the jump ring are slightly overlapped. And we're going to just take our flat nose and give it a nice squeeze, and then you can hear that click, and that's a good click. So we want that click so that we know there's absolutely no room between the two sides of our jump ring. That is exactly what we're looking for. So you never ever want to look at your jump ring and see light between the two sides of it, because you know what that means. That means we're just going to lose that piece eventually.
Pammy J is wondering what size cabochon it is.
Pammy J, that is a really good question. I don't remember, but we're going to measure it. So, of course, now that I said it, it's going to be just a little bit off measurement-wise. I believe it is 14 by 10. 10 by 14. And one of these days, I know you guys have been asking, especially for the Friday events, when we do our shopping events or our Friday markets. I know you've been asking to show these settings, and I did not forget. I will do it one of these weeks, absolutely. But in the meantime, let's create a necklace. So I'm going to pour out my little teeny tiny 15 OC beads onto my work surface. And you know, I love various spacers. And so I use these little 15 O's as spacers. I know I've talked about them like a million times. So these are actually little teeny hollow metal beads. I love using metal beads because they, they're just so much more sturdy. They will endure a lot more. For example, if you're making a wrapped loop and there's a little metal bead, it's never going to break like a glass bead does. So, and you know, for various other reasons, I really do like these beads so much. And so whenever I do eventually a Friday morning market where I feature spacers, I will be sure to feature these. Okay, so I have my soft flex wire right here. And actually, you know what I forgot to grab, but it's very easily fixed. Forgot to grab one of my little bead stoppers. Okay, so I have all these fun little things in this room. So I just grabbed a bead stopper. So like I said, all I'm going to do is replicate this pattern because I don't want to reinvent the wheel as you are watching me. But otherwise, if I had unlimited time, maybe I would just remix it all and see, see what happens. So we are going to first string our focal point piece, which is the red jasper pendant. And next, I have a little turquoise bead. And on the other side, we're going to have, this is actually turquoise, but this beautiful turquoise cube, it only wants to be turquoise. It's actually dyed magnesite. And some of you have seen this before because I have featured it in Friday morning videos. Okay, Lee. Oh, and no, but wait, there's more. I didn't grab my little cubies. I love these cubies. I love cubies, period. And of course, I had to throw a few cubies into this necklace. And what I call cubies are just the various cube-shaped spacers. So some of them are not a perfect cube. They're actually like a cornerless cube, and they are just so very fun when you design, and you just need to add a little texture, a little something fun, and these work out great. I love experimenting with different shape spacers, even though you would think a spacer is probably the least of our design, but they actually add so much. Okay, ladies, so as I'm stringing, I'm just making it a point to replicate here, and I have a beautiful chocolate pearl, and then a little turquoise bead. It's faceted, and then we have a red jasper. And next, we are going to add another spacer. So you can see how I'm using spacers between most beads. They don't have to be between every bead, but I like using them between most beads. They just give us that little bit of a metal gleam. And I always say that how you can differentiate jewelry that is more contemporary from jewelry that was made a long time ago is by the use of metals. You know, when you look at modern jewelry, and of course, I don't think you could mistake this for something vintage, of course, but when you look at modern jewelry, metals are used so much more, and they're used differently. Like this, for example, this is literally, I'm using the metal spacers to showcase each bead. So each one of these beads is so beautiful. It's a little creation by nature, and I want each one of these to be framed in some way. And these really tiny little seed beads, they're really helping me do that. They may be small, but they pack a lot of oomph. Okay, ladies, and this is the oh, actually, no, I don't want two beads. I want just one of the little spacer beads. And this is our one side. This is the first time, the first side rather. We have just completed it. And because I don't want to lose anything off the string, I will put my bead stopper at the end, and it can just hang out. And now if I have to pick it up, you know, nothing happens. So these are just a really nice thing to have.
Lori says, I'm always amazed with the use of your spacers, Irina. Are these sterling spacers?
Oh, thank you you so much, Lori. No, these are not sterling spacers. In fact, years ago, I used to mostly use sterling findings, but I have switched to base metal findings for the most part because, well, first of all, what you can find in sterling findings is quite limited. Because, the more expensive something is, the less of it they're going to make. So I find that if you only want to use sterling spacers, you're going to limit your designs by quite a bit. Secondly, I know that some people, not a lot of people, but some people. Oh, and as I'm chatting with you, I'm just going to point out that this little grouping of 3 smoky quartz beads, this is my only grouping where it's like a pattern of 3. And sometimes when I do asymmetry, I love doing a little mini pattern like that. And, you don't have to have anything that's a pattern on the other side. It just kind of balances whatever else is going on the other side. And I treat it almost as a single unit.
Speaking of groups of beads, Allie says, once you told us that the spacers give the eye a place to rest and that they support small groups of beads.
You know what? That's a really good way to think about that as well. So if everything is just kind of like bunched up and you see all those beads, it's not comfortable for our eye. But if we have these little breaks, that is a good way to think about that. Your eye gets a chance to take a little break, and then you can really enjoy the next little grouping or the next bead. But back to Lori's question. So no, these are definitely not sterling. And I don't really find that you have to have sterling. Some people have this impression that sterling does not tarnish. Well, in fact, sterling will tarnish more so than most of your base metal components. And unless you have allergies where you cannot wear base metal, I think base metal is lovely. It gives us a chance to have many more designs, definitely more options than sterling. For myself, when I make earrings, all of my ear wires are sterling. Other than that, I don't really care if it's a sterling finding or not, as long as it's beautiful. Some findings are not created beautifully, so I won't use them, whether it's sterling or not. But these are so perfect. They're so teeny and they're just so perfect. And unless you have allergies, I just would not worry about them not being sterling.
Althea says, had a problem getting on Facebook.
Hi, Althea. I'm so glad you were able to join us.
Debbie says, hey, everyone.
Hi, Debbie.
Kim K says, hi, everyone. I'm late, but I'm happy to be here now.
And hello, Kim. I'm also so happy that you were able to be here. Okay, ladies. So I just realized that I have the wrong size, or is this the wrong? Yeah, this is the wrong size of crimp covers, so that's not good. I'm going to ask Tony to grab some crimp covers from my classroom. So just the other day, I was teaching, actually last night, my gosh, just last night, I was teaching a class where I was using 3mm crimp covers, which with something like this is not incredibly chunky. And so I feel like 3mm crimp covers as opposed to 4mm crimp covers are just a better choice. And whether you use 3mm or 4mm, it's literally just a design choice, just like every little bead in this is a design choice. So Tony just brought me 3mm crimp covers. Thank you so much, Tony.
Of course.
And I am going to just set things up here so that we can do our next step. Okay, so this is a crimp, and I know most of you have crimped before, but sometimes we have new people joining us, and perhaps you're just getting started. So I like to show every little bit of making the project. So this is a crimp. It's a 2x2 crimp, which is fairly standard size-wise. And I am putting the crimp on my stringing material, which is soft flex wire. This is the fine soft flex 0.014. And once I have the crimp on, next I'm going to string through both sides of the wire guardian. So each wire guardian has like a little tube on either side, and we're going to string through both of these little tubes. And once you are through both tubes, we are going to put the crimp right over both sides of our soft flex wire. And soft flex wire is my stringing material of choice for this project. And I'm going to just bring together the two sides of the wire guardian a little bit, just to make that loop a little smaller, just a preference. And now I'm going to use a crimper. And the crimper, or the crimping tool, this is a wonderful tool for using with crimps. And I know that some people are a little bit intimidated by crimping. So hopefully once you watch this demo, you will no longer be intimidated. So you can see that there are two openings in the crimping tool. One of them looks like a little kidney bean. That is the one closest to me. The oval opening is the closest to the camera. So the kidney bean shaped opening is the one I'm going to use first. I'm going to line up my crimp like this. And I did leave a tiny little space between the crimp and the wire guardian. And now I'm just going to crimp. And so what I mean by crimping is I bring the two handles together, nice and firm, and that is going to reshape our little crimp tube. So you can see there's a groove in it. So I have just reshaped the crimp tube so that now it has the shape of the crimp, or rather the crimper. So that makes sense. And so now we're going to use the remaining opening, which is the oval opening, and we're going to hold it something like this. And if you actually look in between the jaws of our crimper, you can see the groove. Can you guys see the groove? Awesome. So now we're going to fold it once more. So the way I do this is I'm going to align the crimp so that it's fully within that opening, and give it a good squeeze like you mean it. And it's going to fold over like a little book, and it actually becomes a bit smaller in diameter. And now we're going to cut off all of the excess wire. We do not need to keep any of that excess wire because, well, you know, I know that some people feel like it's more secure if you take that wire end and you feed it into the beads, right? First of all, you're not always going to be able to do that because the beads, some of the beads have a very small hole, especially when it's a tiny bead you're using. You're just not going to be able to. But let's say you are able to feed the excess wire into your beads. Eventually, it's going to pop out and stab you in the neck, and that's not good. You're not going to enjoy it, I promise. So let's just go ahead and rely on the crimp. And I know that some people like to double crimp. And again, that's not really accomplishing a whole lot. So as long as you crimp exactly like I just showed you, You should be just fine. That little crimp is very mighty. It's going to hold on to some very heavy necklaces. Okay, so once we have crimped our crimp, I know it sounds so redundant, right? Crimp the crimp. So once we have folded it over, we're going to attempt to put it into our crimp cover. Okay, it doesn't want to go in very easily, so let's not force it. So we're just going to open this up a little bit and make it easy on ourselves. And we're going to do that by putting our chain nose inside the crimp cover and open the chain nose a little bit, forcing the two sides of the crimp cover apart.
Lori says, I love your sense of humor, Irina.
Oh, thank you so much, Lori.
And she adds, I only use sterling silver ear wires too. Thank you very much for your help. I always feel I should use sterling. Too expensive today than it was years ago.
I agree with you. Sterling has become so expensive, which is why a lot of us have switched to mostly base metal findings. Sometimes it makes sense to use a sterling finding, and again, you know, it's going to make sense to different people at different times. You know, it's all preference based, unless you are severely allergic. Okay, ladies, so now my crimp is inside the crimp cover. I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to gently, very gently, push the two sides together like this. And you're going to get to the point where it's mostly together, and yet there's a little gap between the two sides, so our seam, and we're going to close it. So we're going to take our chain nose from this position to a slightly different position where you're going to be pressing just on the one side of the crimp cover, like I'm doing right now. And then we're going to turn the crimp cover and press on the other side. And that's it. That is all we need to do. And at the end of it all, we have a little round bead. And we're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. So the only thing that's going to be different on the other side is that we have to be aware of draping, how the necklace is going to drape. So if we bunch everything up and make it really, really taut, it's not going to drape well. And we want this to be very luxurious and very drapey. And so we're actually going to leave a tiny, tiny space between the crimp and the beads. So that's kind of important. And when I say tiny, tiny space, I mean no more than 1 millimeter. But what that's going to accomplish is it's going to, here, I'm going to show you what it's going to accomplish. So first, again, I'm going to bring this together and make that loop a little smaller. And so as long as you have a little space, your necklace or the focal point of your necklace can curve nicely. Whereas if you bunch everything up and then crimp, it's not even going to want to curve like this. It's just going to look very awkward because it wants to be straight.
Bobby says, oops, guilty here. I always hide some wire under a few beads.
Well, Bobby, you know what? If it makes you happy, that's okay. But in general, I don't find it useful, because I promise you, it's not that little bit of wire that is holding your necklace in place and keeping it from breaking. It's just not that. It's really how well you wrangle your crimps. So as long as you do a good job crimping, you really don't need to worry about it at all. And frankly, if you don't do a good job crimping, that little bit of wire is not going to help you. So, you know, but having said that, if it really makes you happy, why not? It's a small thing, right? Okay, guys. So again, I'm going to use that kidney bean shaped opening first. So we're going to do it like we mean it, nice and snug. And now I'm using the remaining oval shaped opening. And again, do it like you mean it. So as long as you do it like you mean it, it should be okay. And again, I'm going to cut off the excess wire. And I have to tell you, I have never had a necklace break or come apart with a single crimp. As long as you use your crimper, I promise it'll be great. Okay, ladies, so now I just need to cover my crimp and we can move on to the next couple of steps.
Ellen says her favorite is the design is stunning and her favorite color is amethyst.
Oh, thank you so much, my dear. Thank you. You know, these are my babies. I love playing with beads until I achieve the effect that I really am looking for. So it always makes me so happy when you love my babies and you give them a good home. And of course, they're all listed. And this one, you know, this crimp cover, it's just coming together so nicely. I barely have to even press on the two sides. So there we go. So all three colorways are in the Etsy shop. And of course, they're in the section that is called as seen on, featured on Facebook, right? Yes, that's it. Okay, ladies. So now we are going to make a couple of little components that are going to hold our, they're going to connect our focal point piece to our chain. And that reminds me, you have a segment of chain. It is 20 inches in length. And at this point, you can make it shorter if you want to, or keep all of the length. So the way that I use this chain has large enough links where we can actually use it both as our main chain as well as our extender chain. So I have just found a good spot to cut my chain into two segments. One of the segments being approximately 2 inches shorter than the other. So I just cut it, and of course the longer piece is going to become our extender chain as well as our main chain. And the shorter piece is going to end in a lobster claw. So because I'm a righty and because there are more right-handed people than left-handed people, I generally put the shorter end on the right side because that's going to be my side with the lobster clasp. So having said that, if you are a lefty or if you're making this for somebody who is left-handed, make sure you put the short side with the clasp on the left side. So this is obviously for ease of putting our necklace on. Okay, ladies, so now we're going to connect the chain to our focal point piece, and we're going to do that with a little link. And so I'm starting my link. I'm just using my round nose pliers because I did not happen to grab my small bail making pliers. That would have been just fine as well. So once you make your loop, you connect it to the wire guardian. This is why I adore wire guardians, because, you know, it's a loop. Not only does it protect your wire, but it also gives you this perfect little loop. It is just so much professionally finished when you use wire guardians. And at the same time, it gives you this perfect connection for any other component, whether it's a loop or maybe it's a jump ring. You can connect directly to chain. You can connect directly to a clasp if you wanted to via the wire guardians. And so now I am just putting my garnet bead on the wire and making another loop on the opposite side. And this loop is going to connect to our chain. So we could have done something like this with a jump ring, but it is so much more fun to make a link with a gemstone bead because, you know, a jump ring is fairly plain, but this gives us another little decorative element. And also it sort of finishes the necklace with a little bit of symmetry. So even though most of the necklace is asymmetrical, I chose to put the same beads on either side to just kind of finish it with a little symmetry. I think it gives it a nice finished look. And we're going to do the same on the other side. So again, a quick review of wrapped loops. We always want to start with a 90-degree angle. That is really the only good way to make a loop. And now we're going to create our loop by going in the opposite direction of that 90-degree angle. Once you get to the point where you have half a loop or something that looks a little bit like a question mark. Okay, you guys saw that. That's my half a loop. So we're going to stop and simply guide the wire all the way around the round nose pliers. And this loop seems to be a little too big, so I'm going to make it a little smaller. So again, I probably should have grabbed my small bail making pliers, but since I didn't, we're just doing this with the round nose pliers. And so now I'm going to hold on to the loop with my chain nose pliers, coil twice around, cut off the excess wire, pinch that little tail in, and we're going to string our little garnet bead onto the loop. And there it is. So, or not onto the loop, but rather onto the wire right next to the loop. And we always want to leave a little space before we bend the wire for the second loop. So be sure to leave that little space so that we have a space to wrap into. And the space that you want to leave, or at least the space that I want to leave, is pretty much exactly the size of 2 width of whatever gauge wire you're using. And again, we're just going to hold on to our loop and wrap into that little space we left for the coiling. And that's it, done. So now, once we snip off the excess wire and pinch in that little tail, now we're just going to finish the ends of our chain. So here's what our necklace looks like.
Lori says, I love this chain.
Oh, thank you so much, Lori. I do too. This is such a beautiful chain. This is an oval Rollo, and it is, you know what? I seem to have, oh no, I thought I misplaced my my lobster clasp, but it's right here. So it's an oval Rolo, and it is kind of a light matte antiqued chain. And we have this exact chain in two of the colorways, and my lightest colorway, the Lake Country one, I used bright silver just because I felt it goes a little better with the white pearls and the rest of the colorway. But it's a lovely chain. It's one of my favorites.
Debbie says beautiful.
Thank you so much, Debbie.
Allie says the chain looks like it has nice weight.
It does. So it's both kind of fine, but at the same time, it has larger links so that it's able to function as an extender chain. So to me, that is always very exciting. Okay, there's that nice click. And now we have a lobster clasp on this end. And all I have left to do is just put my my pearl on the other side, because we're not adding a separate extender chain. This is already built in. Remember how we made this side about 2 inches? Or you can even make it longer yet. It can be, say, 3 inches longer. Really, whatever makes you happy. So you can offset the extender chain side of it by however long it makes sense to you. And I'm making another wrapped loop. And before I wrap, I'm connecting this little loop to the other end of the chain. And now we're going to wrap this last little loop. And this is the finishing touch. That's it. As soon as we finish wrapping this loop, we are actually done making the necklace.
Lori is wondering if the links are soldered.
Thank you for asking, Lori. Yes, indeed, the links are soldered. With finer chain, it's common to have soldered links because, you know, heavier chain often comes with unsoldered links. And when we have finer chain, it's, you know, it's good for it to be soldered so that the links stay in place.
Kim K says, so pretty.
Thank you so much, Kim. So this is what it looks like. It looks very similarly to my other sample, but as you can see, some of the stones vary a little bit. Like on this one, this hawk's eye happens to be quite a bit darker. So I am just going to tell you what's in each of the colorways. And of course, I'm not going to point at every little stone. You're just going to have to figure those out, which is great fun too. But I'll tell you kind of in general terms what each colorway consists of, maybe point out some of the really fun things. And maybe we don't actually need 2 of these. So in the Lake Country colorway, we have the beautiful, I hope you can see how shimmery this is. So we have the beautiful larvikite, also known as Norwegian moonstone, or black labradorite. And then we have an aqua cabochon. Then we have the light gray hawk's eye, which is in the tiger eye family. And then we have some really fun smaller beads, and those smaller beads are going to be iolite and a little bit of turquoise and pearls, and I guess I am describing all the stones. Love the white pearls. And I also really love this coated moonstone. I think it really fits into the whole mood of the necklace. There's also a little bit of, did I say kyanite already, and iolite? So there's kyanite and iolite and aqua. So there are quite a few little aqua beads. And in the next colorway, which is the Amethyst Mountain. We have the amethyst, and then we have the white quartz, more amethyst. We have some beautiful blushy pearls, Venus jasper. This is another color in hawk's eye, and there's a little Tibetan agate. And I believe that covers it all. Oh, and just a tiny little bit of mookaite. These little beads are mookaite. Oh, and there's a little coated larvacite as well, just to kind of balance that darker gray tone.
Althea says, thank you once again, Irina. It's just so attractive.
Oh, thank you so much, Althea. You're so sweet.
Allie says, yes, you can see the pretty flecks in the larvacite.
Oh, awesome. I'm so glad you see that. Thank you, Allie. Okay, ladies, and then of course, last but not least, this is the one we just created, and this is the one that is inspired by the Great Southwest. And so we have the really, really vibrant red jasper. We have what do we have? The brown tone in hawk's eye, and some of them are going to be quite a bit lighter than others. So, there's a little variation. There's lots of turquoise and garnet and a little smoky. Definitely some really fun pearls here. And of course, one of the focal points is the hessonite garnet. And I believe that covers it all. What do you think? Did we miss anything?
Lori says, I love the amethyst.
Thank you so much, Lori. Is that your favorite? So I don't know if I have a favorite. As you guys know, these are all my babies. So, each one is different. We love our babies the same but differently. You know that book, that kid's book, I Love You Purple and I Love You Blue? So it's kind of like that.
Allison says, I learned a lot of new skills. Thank you. The move was interesting.
Oh, yay. Thank you so much. The move.
And please keep your snow there. Please keep your snow there.
Yes. Oh, so you are fully moved now. That's amazing.
Kim K says, I like the way you mix your stones. I spend forever trying to make a decision.
And you know what? That is completely acceptable. Take your time. If you have the time, just take your time and enjoy the process. You have to enjoy the journey, right? Speaking about Allison's move.
Allie says, all three are beautiful.
Thank you so much, Allie.
Lori says, actually, they're all beautiful. My favorite color is aqua.
Oh, that's awesome. I love aqua. Okay, ladies, so let me give you a quick preview of what is coming up. I have some very, very exciting things coming up. So tomorrow, I have a Facebook Live shopping event, and it is a trunk show. So it's a really fun and exciting trunk show, and it is called Sparkling Creations by Jess. Jess is a wonderful artist. She paints, she creates jewelry, and this is kind of a really nice merge of both. So it's both painting and a piece of jewelry. So this is a sample. This is just a sample of how she used it, and I will be showing you multiple samples tomorrow. But what I will actually be presenting are her gorgeous one-of-a-kind components, and this is just a tiny little tip of the iceberg. So this is tomorrow, and I have some really lush coordinating color palettes to go with her beautiful creations. So please join me for that. And again, that's going to be our live shopping event tomorrow, Friday, April 19th at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time on the Eclectica page. So this is my preview for tomorrow.
Karen says, beautiful design. We'll miss you in the morning.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm so sorry that we'll miss you in the morning. You can always rewatch later if you decide to. But keep in mind, ladies, this is a trunk show. And in fact, actually, let me also entice you. If you are local, come on in because there's going to be so much more out in the store. So there's a really wonderful variety of components. So if you're able to come on in, if you're not able to, I will tell you a secret. My favorites are going to be featured tomorrow. So I went through the whole thing. I picked out my absolute favorites by colorway. And as I mentioned, I created coordinating palettes for them. So you will see all of that tomorrow. But wait, there's more. So I'm also inviting you to join me for the whimsical gemstone pins. And that is a tutorial I'm going to be doing next Thursday, April 25th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on my jewelry design page. And that's exactly where you're now. So this is what we're going to be creating next Thursday. And who knows, maybe I'll throw in something else that I don't even know yet if I'm going to. So this might be it, or maybe there'll be more.
Allie says, ooh, cool pins.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, we have not done pins in a couple of years, and pins are so popular right now. I mean, my gosh, everybody's wearing pins. Women are wearing pins. Men are wearing pins. Everybody is wearing pins. So that is why I chose to do pins next Thursday.
Laurie says, oh my goodness, I love the pins. And Kim K says, so cool.
Yay, thank you so much, ladies.
Kim K says, thank you so much. Looking forward to seeing you in the morning.
Yay, me too. But wait, before you guys go away, I have to tell you something.
Allie says, will you have the items in the store on Sunday? Jess's stuff. Yes, it's there.
Yes. So Jess's pieces, her very beautiful one-of-a-kind pieces, will absolutely be available in the store. And they're going to be samples. They're even going to be her paintings, which also I will show you tomorrow during the marketplace, the Friday morning marketplace, also known as shopping event. And so I will have a couple of her paintings. I will also have a beautiful tray to show you, and I will tell you about how these pieces are created. So in the meantime, I don't want to forget. So our Michigan Bead Show is coming up very soon. It's coming up May 4th and 5th, and that is Saturday and Sunday. And so many of you have already gone to the event page for that and RSVP'd. And of course, you know, it's a smaller bead show. I don't expect people come from other states. So, or I mean, you know, if you are in a state that is adjacent to Michigan, absolutely come on down. If you're in Ohio, come see us. Or maybe you're in Indiana, come visit. So hopefully we will get to meet some of you at the Michigan Bead Show. What else was I going to say?
Betty says, awesome. I need pins for my sweaters.
Yay, I know, right? And you know, most of us live in climates where we wear sweaters year round. Even if you're in Florida, it gets so cold at night sometimes, and you want a cool pin for your sweater that is handmade by your own little hands. Okay, ladies. Well, I had great fun chatting with you today, and I hope you like my creations, and I also hope that you will join me tomorrow for the trunk show.
Lori says, pins, what a lovely gift. And Karen says, I cannot wait for the pin live.
Oh, yay! Thank you so much. I'm so glad you're excited about the pins, because I love making pins. I am so excited about making these, and we'll just have a great time like we always do. So in the meantime, thank you so much for all of your wonderful comments. Keep the suggestions coming. I love the suggestions. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the morning. Have a wonderful and creative evening.